Guys, what's up? How you doing? My name is Mel. Welcome to Holmes Law. Today we're going to be talking about conduit bending. Okay, now we're going to be speaking about a few other topics as well as maybe. We're just going to see where this conversation takes us. Okay, today I actually wanted to start off the actual conversation with 3-point saddles. Now, I've actually been asked lots of times a lot of questions about 3-point saddles. It looks like for some reason, apprentices, this is like the number one question. How do you do it? Other methods of doing it. It gets a little bit confusing and whatnot. For the most part, when you're first starting out with conduit bending, it looks like the apprentices don't realize that there's more than actual one way of bending it, as far as when it comes to different degrees. Like you have offsets that you can do, with 30s and 45s and whatnot. Well, saddles, 3-point saddles are the same thing. You can actually use different degrees, okay, to actually, come out with a smoother bend, whether it's a small obstruction or a large obstruction. Okay, so that you can actually space out your bends so that it comes out a little smoother. Now, if you've noticed before, when you ever actually clutter your bends together when it comes with a 3-point saddle and your obstruction is small, you see that it kind of kinks. The pipe wants to kind of kink and it doesn't come out, well, not exactly how it's supposed to come out. Okay, so basically, I just want to let you guys know that there are other degrees that you can use. It's almost like an offset, okay? It's almost exactly like an offset as far as the shrink goes and the degree multipliers. Almost, okay? Uh, so that's what you want to pay attention to. You want to learn other methods of doing 3-point saddles. You don't want to stick with the actual standard 22 and a half on the sides and 45 in the center. Okay, now one thing that I want to also speak about is that when somebody tells you, I want to do a, 22 and a half degree 3-point saddle, you know, when you when you're actually naming the 3-point saddle, they're naming it from the degrees that you're doing it on the sides, because the center degree is just doubled. Okay, so really, when you're calling a 3-point saddle, I want a 22 and a half 3-point saddle. That's really the 45 in the center and the 22s on the side. Just so that you know this, just in case you're looking it up in a book or something, and you don't, confuse yourself. So if I want a 15-degree 3-point saddle, right, that's going to give me two 15s on the side and a 30 in the center. Okay, so you really call it by the degrees that are on the side. That's really, the name of the 3-point saddle that you're doing. All right, so I just want to actually make that clear. Excuse me, I needed to drink a little water already. Anyways, so to continue on, yes, this is exactly what I wanted to bring to you guys. Especially I'm speaking to the apprentices out there now. When you're out in the field, there are multiple times, mostly more than I say 75% of the time, that you're gonna do a 3-point saddle. It's to actually go over another one of your conduits. Whether it be a 3/4 or 1 inch or a half-inch pipe. Most of the time, it's gonna be to actually go over one of your conduits. Okay, so it's gonna be a small obstruction, and what I recommend that looks the best, instead of going with the standard, you know, uh, 22 and a half on the sides and a 45 in the center, you know, I would go with something a little less, sharper. Okay, I would go with something smaller as far as degree goes. All right, and that's why I actually made a video that says, a 3-point saddles for small obstructions. Okay, and what I like to use for when I'm going over a 3/4 conduit or even a 1 inch, because the obstruction isn't that big, and you don't want to make your 3-point saddle. I've seen where some electricians will actually make the 3-point saddle bigger just so that it doesn't look cluttered and it doesn't kink, and that's just not professional in my eyes. Okay, so what I actually recommend is learning how to do the half method, which is exactly what it says. It's half of your standard method, which is your 22.5 degree 3-point saddle. It's actually cutting it down to half. All right. So we would do 11 degrees on the sides, okay, and a 22.5 in the center. Okay. Now I know what you're saying. It doesn't compute to actual like 22.5 in the center. Okay, but it's so small of a difference that it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Because 11 plus 11 is 22, so you're missing the half degree. But like I said, it's so small that you're not even gonna see it. All right. Now, how do you do this 3-point saddle? Okay, if you're doing it on one of your sidewinders or the Greenlee A54, DX, the GX, or whatever you have, a Southwide bender, any bender you have, whatever. If you're actually doing it with an electric bender, then it's not going to be a problem because you can type in the degree and it'll spit it out for you. Okay. And even if not, you'll have pretty sure you're gonna have a digital, angle finder, and you could see when you're at your 11 degree mark or your 22.5 degree mark. Okay, but now when you're dealing with hand benders, okay, with a hand bender, now this is where you know what I'm saying, I want you to pay attention. With a hand bender, basically you're gonna do it the way that you do a standard 3-point saddle. Okay, and I know that on your bender you don't have an 11 degree mark. Okay, but you do have a 22.5 degree mark, and you do have a 10 degree mark. Now, all you really have to do is just basically go to 10 degrees, you know what I mean, and go to your 22.5 degrees, and that's it. Put it on the floor, make sure that they're actually level. If you see that it's not and it needs a little more or less, you can take it out. You know what I mean? It's not really that big of a deal. Okay, it's 11 degrees. It's 1 degree less than what you actually need. All right, so if you want to, you can actually just go over a little bit. But what I would do, I would just take it to the 10 degree on both of them, and I would put it on the floor. I'd see how I am, you know what I mean, and then I would work it out from there. All right, and this 3-point saddle, to me, I'm telling you, is the best because it'll look really good around small obstructions. Okay, even if you want something, even if it is a pretty big obstruction, maybe something like, I don't know, a 5 inch obstruction, 4 inch obstruction, whatever it is, and you have the space for it, and you want to do this 3-point saddle, then it works. Not only is it easy to pull your wire through, okay, but it saves you on putting boxes and conduits, okay, because altogether you only have 45 degrees. Okay, don't forget that these 3-point saddles, I mean, it eats up a lot of your degrees. Out of the 360 that you have to put a box, which, most do less than 360, 270, something like that. But, it eats up a lot of your degrees. If you do the standard method, you already have a 90 degree, gone. So, these half methods actually work pretty well. And I'm telling you, once you learn how to do these, it's going to save you, the frustration of when you're doing your wire pulls, sending through your snake or pulling wire. Not only that, it's going to look clean, and that's the most important part, is it looking clean. Because another subject that I want to actually go and talk about before I get there, is making your run look nice, smooth, and clean. And I'm going to actually explain what I mean by that. Before I go to that, I just want to talk a little bit more about this half method. Now, I have the video out that'll explain it, from step by step. Okay, but what I do want to say is uh, how to go about doing it. Now, in case you don't want to watch the video and you want me to tell you how to actually do it here on the podcast, I'm not going to explain how to go about it step by step, but what I do want to tell you is that the multiplier is going to be 5. Okay, your multiplier is going to be 5 times the obstruction. Okay, And to adjust the center is going to be a little different. What it's going to be is 3/16 of an inch for every 2 inches. Okay? So for every 2 inches of rise, you're going to move it 3/16 of an inch. Okay? That's going to be your center adjustment. 3/16 of an inch for every 2 inches. Okay? Now let's just say you're doing a 1 inch, obstruction. All right, that's almost less than an eighth. I wouldn't even bother with it because it's not going to even be noticeable. You know what I'm saying? Or if you want, you can do an eighth. You know what I'm saying? But just know that for those that don't have to actually watch the video, and all you need is the multiplier and the shrink. The multiplier is going to be 5, okay, times your obstruction, and your shrink is going to be 3/16 of an inch for every 2 inches of rise. Okay, so don't forget that. Okay, and that's called the half method. You can look it up on my channel. It's 3-point saddles for small obstructions. Okay. Now, moving right along, what I'm actually saying, what I mean that I want clean runs, okay? Now, when I'm on my jobs and I actually see people bending conduit these days, it's just something that, like, I don't know, it's like a pet peeve of mine or something, I remember when I first started bending conduit, I wanted to bend around every obstruction that there was in the job site. Like I wanted a reason to actually bend conduit. All right, but I'm telling you guys that as you get experienced, and not only that, I think foremans as well don't want to see some crazy fancy bends. We just want to see straight conduits. 90s if you have to, and just keep it straight for as long as possible at the same elevation that you can as long as possible. Okay? So, how do you achieve that? You achieve that by actually stepping back and planning your routes from A to B. Okay? Taking a look at your route, getting on a ladder, pulling out your tape measure, measuring, you know, don't just start freestyling and start throwing up conduit and find yourself in front of an obstruction. Uh-oh, I gotta, bend an offset. When you could have avoided it just by moving it over from the beginning of your run. You know what I'm saying? So that's something that you have to pay attention to. That's one thing that I hate when I'm looking at a run, okay, and my actual mechanic could have avoided the obstruction 20 feet ago if he would have just planned his route from the beginning. You know what I mean? So that's something that you actually need to do from the beginning, is plan your route. Get on a ladder, look at your route, start pulling out your tape measure, measure and see where you can actually avoid these obstructions. Now, if you can't avoid the obstruction, you can't avoid it. You know what I mean? Then that's when you actually need to do an offset or do a kick or whatever you need to do. But what I'm actually saying is that sometimes there's some pointless, excuse me, excuse me, guys. There's some pointless bends that are actually being bent out there on the field. I mean, absolutely pointless bends that could have been avoided. Okay? And that's what I'm actually trying to get at when I say, running your conduit clean and trying to, keep the bends down to a minimum. Alright? One, it helps when you're pulling wire, especially when you start doing larger conduit, and you're making all these bends. It's just that much harder to actually get the wire through. Even though you're actually pulling it with a machine, it just makes it that much tougher. You know what I mean? And you can actually, it saves time. Number two, it saves time. You don't have to actually spend time on the bender making these bends. You know what I'm saying? So you could actually just keep it as straight as possible for as long as possible at the same elevation for as long as possible. Like I said, you're gonna come across where you need to make a bend, but that's only should be if there's no other choice. You know what I'm saying? Okay, now another point that I need to make is, yes, there are times that you need to actually, you know, go over all of your structures. Like if you're actually riding the wall and you're trying to keep it to the actual structure of the building and you need to go over these obstructions, then obviously, you know, I don't have to tell you that you got to do what you have to do. You got to make these bends, and it is what it is. All right. Now, if you can avoid it, then sometimes it helps if you put a box. If you sometimes by putting a box you can avoid so many bends, and if you can do that, then I would actually mount a junction box. You know, sometimes it'll actually help and save you time from bending so much, and it'll actually make your conduit run look cleaner if you build racks and build out your surface so that it's actually you know all the same elevation or all the same height. Like let's just say you have two beams, and then after those two beams, the whole rest of the ceiling or whatever wall is just at the same height. In my opinion, I feel like it would be best to just build out some racks instead of having to go around the beams. Just build out some racks and just keep it all the same height or the same elevation or whatever the case is, if that is possible to do. If the GC is saying, also there could be times when you're on some commercial jobs that, your general contractor is also putting his input in, and you might have other trades coming through that area. That's why it's also important to, stay coordinated. Look at your coordinated drawings. Stay in contact with your GC and the other trades as well. To find out if you have any other trades going through that area, whether it be a duct, whether it be plumbers or whatever the case may be. You know. So that's just something that I wanted to actually voice and you know let you guys know about, because this is something that I see that out in the field almost all the time. You know, pointless bends being made when you could have actually avoided it. And yeah, so you have guys that actually think that I mean, making bends and doing these fancy bends like it actually. I don't know. I guess they like to waste their time doing bends. But to me, I think straight bends is what actually looks the best. That's just my opinion. What do you think? Actually, let me know in the comments what you actually think about what I'm saying here. Am I wrong? Am I right? Let me know how you actually run your conduits. What do you think is actually better? Do you like to actually spend your time, bending around your obstructions? Do you agree as far as just, you know, trying to plan your run and your route or whatever the case may be? Just, let me know in the actual, comments. Yeah, please. I really do want to know. This is something that I want to know if I'm alone in this out there. All right. Now, another point that I want to make is I was asked a couple of weeks ago, how do I know when to use, different degrees for my offsets? And I actually thought about that, and I was like, that's a pretty, it's a pretty decent question. If I was an apprentice, that's something that I probably would have asked. Excuse me, guys, I need to drink some water. Okay, so yes, when to use different degrees. All right, so most of the time, how I decide when I want to use different degrees for offsets, it all basically depends on the situation. Where I'm installing it. What kind of how many wires I'm running. What size conduit it is. So a lot of different things play a part. Mostly if you ask any electrician, they're always gonna say they use 30-degree bends. One, because the math is easy, the multiplier is two. For me personally, being an experienced conduit bender, when I actually decide on the degree, it just depends on the actual situation that I'm in. Okay, for me, the degrees, what that means is how far apart my bends are gonna be. Okay, so I actually have the real estate and I have a lot of area okay, and it's not going to look absurd, I'm going to try to use the smallest degree. Now, what that means is that my bends are going to be farther apart. Now, what that also means is that my offset is going to be pretty large. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be pretty wide apart. Okay. Now, if that isn't going to matter, okay, and I'm not going to be in anybody's way, then, and it's not going to look absurd, then it's actually a good thing, because when you pull your wire, you won't even feel it. You know, let's just say you do a 15 degree bend or a 22 and a half degree bend, you know, instead of doing a 30. Okay, your bends are gonna be farther apart, but it's gonna be less, it's gonna be, it isn't gonna be that hard to actually pull your wire through and whatnot. Now, if you another point is, if you have other bends in that vicinity, and you want to actually, you don't want to stand out, and have a 15-degree bend when you have a whole bunch of 45-degree offsets, then that's another point that you might want to think about. You might want to match the other bends that are around you. Another thing is you might not have that much real estate, like I said in the first point. You might have to do an offset, and you have to have that offset completed within a certain amount of inches. Okay? Well, in that case, you're going to have to do the math and make sure that your offset is within that real estate. We're within those inches that you have. Let's just say you have, I don't know, let's just, for an example, try to imagine, you know, you're coming off of a beam, and right away you have an obstruction somewhere, you have to go under it, and you only have, let's just say, I don't know, 15 inches, okay? And your offset is a 5-inch offset. All right. So you have to make sure that you only have 15 inches to get your whole offset done. All right. So your offset is 5 inches. If you multiply it by 2, that gives you 10 inches of in between your bends. So you're just barely making it. You could still make it and get under your obstruction and clear it. Okay, but now you could see that if things were a little different and it was a little tighter, you would have to find a different multiplier to give you a spacing between bends that's a lot smaller. Okay, so like, let's just say if you were to go, if your obstruction was 5 inches, like we said, but you had less space in between. Okay, let's just say you had 10 inches in between. All right, then let's just say we want to go with a 60-degree bend. Okay, so 5 times 1.2 gives you 6 inches. Okay, that'll give you enough to clear the 10 inches that you have. Okay, if you understand what I'm saying. So that's another way that you could actually choose on when to use different degrees. Okay, that's what dictates when you'll have to use different degrees. Okay, and that's very important as well. All right, now also, lastly, larger conduit. You're gonna find yourself mostly not the smaller conduits, that you actually use the hand bender with. In my opinion, and in my career and in my time, I've seen myself use all the smaller degrees when you use larger conduits. Okay, now anything that has to get done, bent on a table bender, for the most part in my career, I've used mostly smaller degrees of bends. Okay, because sometimes you have some small offsets, and being that you're working with the table bender, your spacing in between bends has to be a lot wider apart, or you just won't be able to actually bend your offset. So I see myself mostly bending 5 degrees, 10 degrees, 15-degree, offsets. Not saying that I don't do 30s and 45s. I don't really do 45s too much when it comes to larger conduits. I don't really do that. I try to avoid that almost all exclusively. The largest I go is usually 30. Okay, but yeah, with larger conduit, for the most part, you will find yourself using the smaller degrees almost all the time. if you know what you're doing. I mean, that's what I usually do. Okay, so that's another reason of when you use different degrees for the offsets. That was a question that was asked to me a couple of weeks ago, so I wanted to actually answer that here live as well. Okay, so there was another topic over here. I actually went ahead of myself. Oh yeah, that was a setback. Using setback. I was a little surprised. A couple of weeks ago, I think it was a week ago, I put out a um a little social media post on Instagram as far as setback. It was a little diagram, with a 90-degree stub, and I put a kick on it and everything, and I gave you all the information as far as the gain goes and all that, and I asked I asked you to lay out the kick and the 90 all in one shot. You know, I wanted the kick at a specific spot, and I gave you all the information that you needed in order to use the setback correctly. All right, and most people got it right. Most people got it right. So that means that you guys are actually listening to me and paying attention, man. I'm actually happy about that. Okay, but what I'm talking about now is that I'm actually going to do a video explaining it a little better on different bends, not only kicks, okay, because you can use setback for so many other things, all right? Now, the setback, just to actually be clear, all it is it's giving you the reference point of the back of the 90, okay? So, when you use your setback, all right, and you actually mark it on your conduit, all that's telling you is that that is where the back of the 90 is going to be. Now, you know that if you're a bender, and you know that that's important to know, because when you want to do multiple bends, right, and you want to actually, make another bend, you need to know where the back of the 90 is so that you can do your second bend, all right, whether it be an offset or whether it be a 3-point saddle or whether it be a kick. Most of the time, you judge on the second bend from your back of your 90. Okay, so let's just say you're actually doing a run, all right, and you have a 90-degree stub coming out of a junction box, right, and then you're going over an obstruction, all right, and let's just say it's a 3-point saddle you have to do, and you're going over a conduit or whatever, all right? So when you're taking your measurement, okay, you take your measurement for your 90-degree stub, all right? Now next, you have another obstruction, which is a conduit, okay? So what you have to do is you're going to take your measurement from the back of your 90 to where the actual center of that conduit is where you have to do that 3-point saddle. All right. Now, when you're actually laying out your conduit, yeah, of course, you can do your 90-degree bend first, and then apply your 3-point saddle, measurement, and then bend it. Okay. Yes, you can do that, but why not learn how to do it professionally? Okay. What if you actually can't actually do that? What if you're running rigid or something else, or what if it's a different situation? It's good to know how to lay out your conduit correctly and properly, okay? And this way you don't have to actually take it off of the bender and then lay it out again and then put it back in the bender, okay? If you were on the sidewinder doing this or on the table bender, it's actually waste time. You could actually just leave it there. You'll have all your bend marks there. You don't have to take it back out. Now, if it's a hand bender, then yeah, right, it's not that big of a deal. But it's just good to know how to use the setback. And once you lay everything out ahead of time, you have everything laid out, and you can just bend, and that's it. And it's just the best feeling when you actually complete all your bends, and it fits perfectly. So, like I was saying, you take your measurement from the back of the 90 to the obstruction, which is the conduit, okay? And let's just say it's whatever, 10 inches away. So now when you're laying out your conduit, okay, you you mark out your stub or whatever the case may be, then you put the setback on it, you mark your setback. Now once you know where your setback is, alright, that mark that you did for the setback, now you know that's the back of the 90. That's all that is. The setback is the reference point from the back of the 90. Once you know where that is and you mark it on your conduit, okay, that's not a bending point anymore. That's just a reference point of the back of the 90. So if your obstruction is 10 inches from the back of the 90, then you know that you have to just measure from that setback mark 10 inches over, and that's going to be the center of your obstruction. Now you can commence to lay out your 3-point saddle. You see what I'm saying? So I'm coming out with a video to explain that a little better. I'm going to explain that and how to do offsets with them, maybe even 4-point saddles for it. Okay, because you don't only, I know the only video that I came out with was for using the setback for kicks, but there's so many other, reasons that you can actually use the setback. You know what I mean? So that'll be coming out soon, and I'll actually help you guys out with that. All right. Also, there was, I wanted to speak about this because I know that a lot of people don't really like the corner offsets. Two offsets, back to back, close together like that. It just doesn't sit well with other electricians. I always get some bad comments every time I talk about it. But it is an official bend. And if you look in any of the union books, any of the NJATC books, you're going to see it in there. Corner offset, inside and outside corner offsets. And with that said, it saves you from having to put either an LB, or too many 90s, just to get to another box or to get around the corner of a wall or whatever. And if you do it correctly, it really does not look bad. In my eyes, it doesn't look bad because I've been seeing them all my life. I've bent them quite a few times. So I don't see anything wrong with them. But, I respect the opinions of others. And there are others that would rather do anything else. Like I said, and I respect that because you know what? Like I said in the beginning of the video, I like to see some clean work. Right? I'd rather keep the conduit as straight as possible for as long as possible. But when it comes to, issues like this where you're coming around the wall, and, it's just best to try to keep the conduit, one piece instead of having to use an LB. The one thing I hate to do is I hate to put conduits in when you really don't have to, because then it's just another pull point that you have to get up on a ladder, and pull another, get on a ladder and just actually have another pull point, But yeah, please in the comments let me know what you think about, corner offsets. Have you ever seen them? Have you ever bent them? Have you ever heard of it before? Let me know. It's similar to a 4-point saddle, only it's bent differently. Okay, it has two offsets and they're bent in the middle like a 90. So you could actually go over it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can go on my videos on YouTube, type in corner offset by Holmes Law, and you'll see how it actually looks and all that. Yeah. So, lastly, compound 90 segment bends and all that. Learning how to actually use segment bends. Segment bends can take a little while to do, but it proves to be, very useful when it comes to pulling wires. It's so much easier. Number two, it does look cleaner. Okay, like segment bends, you can use it almost like the same reason that you would use a compound 90. In the corner where there's an obstruction in the corner and you want to get around that corner, a compound 90 takes you around that corner by bending 245s. Well, a segment bend, if you actually make a wide radius 90, you can clear that obstruction as well that's in the corner. So that's another way of using a segment bend. But it's also good practice to learn how to do a segment bend, a wide radius 90, also known as a wide radius 90, so that, you can actually go over some large round obstructions and making it look nice. You know what I'm saying? It's all about the art, the art of conduit bending. It's just making your work look nice, man, and clean. You know what I'm saying? And actually showing somebody else that, wow, this guy actually, took the time to think about it. You know what I mean? That's what I actually appreciate about the work. You know, but yeah, learn segment bends. It'll only take you a little bit longer, and it's gonna look that much better. You know what I'm saying? I have all those videos on my actual channel. So if you have any questions, just let me know. You can, drop a comment, and yeah, just let me know. Other than that, I'm getting close to my end of the show. I want to actually, thank you guys for listening. Uh, if you have any topics that you want me to actually cover, just you can drop them on the Discord. I'm gonna start doing Discord lives more, but I'm also gonna start doing some podcasts more as well. If you have any topics that you want me to cover, please just let me know. Okay, just you can catch me on any social media, drop me comments, just let if you have any questions, you can the best way to get in contact with me to answer a question would be on Discord as well. So with that, guys, I'm gonna actually call it a day, and yeah. So with that, my name is Mel. Thank you guys, and I'm out.